Hey everybody, welcome to World Building with LegendKeeper. I am David, this is Highshelf Gaming, and joining me on my left and right over here is Braden, maker of LegendKeeper, man of the hour. Thank you so much, Braden, for joining us tonight and talking about world building, man. This is gonna be great.
Definitely.
Yes, I like you give us a little taste of the announcer voice just every so often, and I love it every time.
Just a little spice.
Perfect. And over here next to me is Anto from Icarus Games. Anto, welcome back, man.
Greetings, people of the internet.
Yes, the internet, all of you. And then all the way on the other end is Adam with Sword and Source, a collection of resources that I've been playing around with last week. So Adam, welcome to our little live stream, man.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be good. I think the only thing to kind of mention to everybody is, of course, this is the live stream, and all of this will be available on YouTube after the fact, right? I think Twitch requires us to hold on to it for a day before YouTube gets to see it. So tomorrow, maybe the next day, I'll get it over onto YouTube, and then we'll all link it on our various places so anybody who missed tonight can watch it on YouTube. And that will get us rolling. I think, Braden, you've got some fun topics for us tonight, so I'll turn it over to you.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Hello, dungeon denizens. Today we're going to talk about procedural content generation in world building. And I think amongst all of us, Adam probably has the most hands-on experience with procedural generation. So Adam, I might put you in the hot seat first. But today, just to give you a little heads up, today we're going to talk about what procedural generation is, what it's used for, pros, cons, and all that kind of stuff. So I think to get us started, I would like to pose a question to everyone. What is procedural generation? And Adam, I would love to hear your perspective first.
Sure.
And to kind of give some context to that, can you actually give us a brief intro on why that is? Like, what is Here Be Taverns? And maybe any other like proc gen projects you've worked on.
Yeah.
Sure. I'd say I'm not exactly an expert on the topic, but I'm incredibly interested in it. I think there's so much that's cool about it. Here Be Taverns is a project I worked on a long time ago. It was the first side project I ever built. That was in 2015. And what it does, it's basically like random tables for game masters to get inspiration for their games.
I'm just going to pull it up.
Yeah, there it is. So that's the 2015 version. So this actually has no procedural generation in it.
Oh.
Or maybe it does. I guess it depends on how we define it. So let's
Sure.
take a crack at that first. Yeah. What it is when you build a world or a story or any content you can think of anything. And instead of crafting it by hand, instead of creating every piece yourself, instead you define a set of axioms, simple rules that have to be followed. So it's like writing code, if anyone's familiar with writing code. Doesn't have to be written in code, but you just need to define rules. And then from those rules, the world is created, or the content, or whatever. So in Here Be Taverns, in that version we're looking at there's not much like that. It's actually just a whole bunch of lists. So it's actually similar to random tables you'd see in the Dungeon Master's Guide today. So it's like a bunch of tables with lists of names and things.
That's kind of a procedural, right? Because it tells you, like, just roll a D100 and here comes treasure, or here comes a dungeon, or here comes a thing.
I think that's
a good point. Yeah.
The beauty of this is, if you've ever done a D100, random table, or a D20 random table of like items or magic or encounters or whatever, that I think, in my opinion, that is absolutely procedural generation.
It's like one procedure, right? The procedure is roll the dice and read the thing, but it's a procedure.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
That's fun. That's really fun. Yeah, because like you will just invent taverns, and I'm like, roll a new tavern, right? And then it'll give me a different thing entirely, and it's all random, right? On the back end. That's really fun.
Yeah, so to build this, it's literally like building it in the Dungeon Master's Guide. That's how I built that version. So Tamsin is like on a list of names.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then the procedure actually for tavern names is a fun one because it has a few extra possible rules. It's like there's a 25% chance I'll call it like some person's names in, and then there's like a 25% chance I'll call it like the noun and noun or something.
Sure.
Right. So there's a few rules in there. I forget what they are, but it's
Sure.
like simple rules like that. And then you get to have fun and just roll dice and just watch this world appear in front of you, or watch this tavern appear in front of you.
Yeah, I really like tools like this. I have in the past, like, I'm really bad about making maps, right? I'm really bad about making all kinds of details. So as a GM, I'll go to, there's a bunch of tools out there, but I'll go and get a map of a town made for me. And I might tweak something, right? Or I'll go and grab, in my favorite game, Cyberpunk, they do the same thing of like, what's your character's heritage? What do they wear? What, you know, do they wear jewelry or spiked boots or whatever? And, you know, all of that's just rolled out. I'm like, I need an NPC real quick. And I'll just roll some dice and get like a bodybuilder dude who wears just mini skirts and is this like crazy cool guy. Yes. It's like, yes, that is exactly who you're going to go to talk to right now, is a bodybuilder who will wear nothing but mini skirts. And it's great. It's fun, right? Because you end up with like an interesting combination of things. And it's like, what's the story behind that? Right? And then like that lets you feed in like you get to invent the connective tissue that makes the procedurally generated item make sense. Right? Yeah. And I love that as a GM. I love just like, ooh, this is a odd concoction. Let's make these two things work. Right?
Yeah. It's so cool. It's such a creative, like an engine for creativity. I have this little toy over there. It's called Story Dice. And it's a great product. Check them out. You just roll dice and they just have pictures only on them. And then you try and tell the story out of them. So
in the chat, DM Rawlings, you are 100% right. So the Traveler life path generation, where you like find out how your character spent their teens and 20s and 30s and 40s before they retired and became part of some ship's crew. And they may have died along the way, because that's how Traveler did it, is their procedural character generation would kill your character if they didn't have good enough stats. And that life path system inspired the Cyberpunk life path system, which includes all of that cultural stuff that I was referencing. And now it's in D&D. Like, I think it's Xanthar's Guide to Everything, 5th edition.
Yeah.
Totally has
this
a life
is your
path.
Life.
Totally has a life path system in it. Yeah, you're like, oh, I don't know where my character's from. I'm gonna roll some dice, and D&D will tell me my character's from. So like,
incredible.
Everybody has been inspired by Traveler, and Traveler makes a lot of procedurally generated stuff, like worlds and solar systems and.
Oh, I have to check that out.
All that, dude. Great. Yeah. There's just tons in the Traveler sci-fi setting for like randomly generated everything. And Patrick, who's normally on this show, he talks about that quite a bit of like, I need a world. It's an ice planet. It's a whatever. It's a gas giant, you know, and you just roll it up and find out what's there.
Amazing.
When you get there. Yeah.
Sci-fi kind of relies on procedural generation. If you want to do an entire galaxy or universe of content, there's no way you can do that yourself. You kind of have to rely on some level of procedural generation to be able to get out in front of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because otherwise your own, what is it? What you think, like, influences
your
so
bias.
much. Yeah, your bias, like, influences so much. Like, every solar system has a terrestrial planet? Really, David? You know? Or like every town has 3 inns that hate each other. Really, David? Like, like as a GM, maybe that's not true in every single village. You know.
So one of the most fun parts of this technique to me is, as a creator or like a developer or builder, you get to be surprised by your own creation all the time, right? Yeah. So like in the example of the map maker. A map maker who draws the entire map and, like, you know, does the outline, the inking, the color work, the painting. It's the end product is sure to be gorgeous, but it won't surprise the map maker anymore. They'll go look at that map again and they'll know every position of every town. But when you take a procedurally generated approach to map making or world building, you just give it a few rules, say like always make sure towns are this close together or like within this range, make sure there's only one ocean. You just come up with rules and constraints and then see what happens.
Right.
And you get to walk in the world that you had a hand in creating, but you don't know it. You don't know the world at all. You're finding out for the first time.
Right.
Yeah, procedural generation is so fascinating. And we talked about this briefly before the stream, but like it's one of those things where the promises leveraged, for example, like in the gaming industry of like, oh, procedurally generated, like No Man's Sky is like my favorite example. If anyone's familiar, it's like, oh, billions of galaxies and like blah, blah, blah. Every leaf procedurally generated, right? And a lot of people might disagree with me, but like I boot that up and I'm like, everything still feels kind of the same. And so like procedural generation as like a panacea of creativity, I think doesn't hold water yet. But procedural generation as like a GM's assistant, like you're talking about, I think is incredible because David, like you said, you know, your procedural generation technique, whether it's rolling the dice or closing your eyes and pointing at a row on a table,
which happens.
Absolutely. Or coding up, you know, an awesome tavern generator or an AI that will scan everything on the internet that looks like a dungeon and then try to make other dungeons out of that. Like,
is that a thing? Please tell me that's a thing.
Probably.
No,
that would be very cool.
But as those things spit out content, you as the storyteller, that content flows through you, and you can add what I think is the missing human element in a lot of procedural generation.
I want to add to that.
Go for it.
Right, when you talk about the human element there, I think that's taste. Right.
Yes.
Like as a GM.
Aesthetic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You look at something that the generator has dished out to you, and you're like, does this fit? Does this like really work? Do I need to make a tweak? Right? Or do we just need to roll all over again? Right? And I think that's on the GM to like not accept everything that they receive, to like be okay with re-rolling those dice and waiting till you see something that is that at least fits in the themes and norms of your world, right? I'm not again, this gets into like you're allowing some of your bias to creep in, but hopefully it's less, because now you're just saying I'm going to veto this thing because like 6-legged monsters don't fit in my modern detective story. You're right. I'm not telling a monster story, so I can't have a monster. Yeah. Something along those lines. I think that's the big differentiator between like just being totally off the rails like No Man's Sky and like I am creating something for my friends and I need it to make sense.
To their credit,
I think that. Go ahead, Fred.
To their credit, No Man's Sky did release an update that made the procedural generation way more interesting, like a couple weeks ago. So if you tried No Man's Sky and wasn't your thing, and I went back to it and I'm like, oh, this is more impressive now. I'm still not playing it, but it's still cool. So maybe check it out.
For me, I think the human element of kind of that procedural generation process is kind of the magic part of it. It's the thing that makes it all click. Like I use a lot of kind of procedural generation and tables and things when I'm building my world, but I think that gets you 90% of the way there, and then it's that last 10% that taking what the table or the generator has spat out for you and making that fit to your world. That's where kind of the magic happens for me.
Yeah. Completely agree. That's so cool. Yeah, I think like maybe the best word here is actually fitness in like an evolutionary sense. I was thinking of this earlier today, and it struck me that like obviously procedural generation is perfect for world building, because you might argue that like the rules of evolution on planet Earth were like it's an emergent creation, right?
Right.
We were all of this gorgeous, beautiful stuff around us that surprises us every day in nature was in a way generated by the a few simple rules. But the key component there is fitness, right? If something doesn't survive or fit in some way or another in the context of our world here, it's killed immediately in like an early generation.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't make it. Yeah.
I like the example that DM Rawlings gave in chat. He said, a technique that I use all the time is I roll 3 times and then pick the one next that makes the most sense in the context or is the coolest. And I think that, like, you're talking about fitness, right? Like that system of coming up with storytelling content or whatever, 3 times random, and then the 4th time is like the big filter, like the human aesthetic filter that says, okay, like lock it up, like bring it all together.
Yeah. And I have kind of a theory around whenever you're telling a story and you're trying to assess which of the 3 or the 4th elements that you want to like present to your players, is to kind of remember that, like, once you make something, like Anto, I've got your world up here, right? And once you make something, and if you don't share it with anybody, it's always yours. You have total like agency over the whole thing, and it doesn't really matter, right? Because you're just doing this for yourself. But as soon as you share it with a player or anybody else, you allow anybody to see it and have a reaction, you're already starting to share aesthetic with them. You're already starting to share style with them. And so, like, Anto, when you made this map, you're like, okay, where are my players going to go? Like, intuitively, you already have a goal of, like, this world needs to be fun, right, to play in. So it can't be, like, destitute. There has to be something for them to do. So let's put in some mountains and some trees and some cities and some, some interest, some intrigue and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just big gray box.
Right, exactly. So you're not building all this stuff in a vacuum, right? Like, I think that's one of the big deals is, like, a procedural engine is kind of in a vacuum. And you're like, okay, here's the idea, here's the kernel, and now I know it has to live outside of a vacuum, so I'm going to package that and then use it. And it's not like I hardly ever use the raw product. Like, it has to, like, work somehow in the world or the thing that I'm making. So, like, I don't know. I just feel like there is something to be said for you are seeking to share this, and that fundamentally changes what you're going to do with it, right?
Yeah. And earlier you mentioned bias, right? Like bias sneaking in, but honestly, like from a storytelling perspective, I think bias in this case is a good thing. Like every story is biased, right? Like if you're running a D&D or a cyberpunk campaign, the whole existence of the story is biased for the players having fun, right? And so that bias is another one of those aesthetic tuning factors you can use to shape that procedural content to your will.
DM Rawlings, I'm really liking your comments here about, like, procedural generation can sometimes be too specific or not specific enough. That's entirely true. Like, I have probably 7 tools that I use for procedural generation because I need things at different scale, right? I need something that makes worlds, or something that makes bars, or something that makes, I don't know, weird guns. Like, there was a while there where I just played freaking, what's that game where you just get 1,000 different kinds of guns? Borderlands. Yeah. I would just play Borderlands and be like, oh, that's a fun game. That's a fun gun. I want that in my game, right? And I kind of use this video game to, like, make objects for me. It's like, that's wild. Yes, I want that. And, like, that was the method. It's like, I can't think of 1,000 different guns, but there's a game that will make them for me.
It's doing it already. Yeah.
Hey, such a great hack. I love that.
Using someone else's procedural generation is also procedural generation, so it's good.
Yeah, exactly.
And taking several generators and kind of compounding them, taking one result from one and one result for another, you end up with a significantly bigger kind of sample size of things that can end up in your world than you otherwise would, which again kind of makes it that much more surprising, the world that you end up with.
Yeah, I agree. Like, every time I've used a generator to make something, I think I would never have thought of that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it because it's outside of my brain, it spits something out. I'm like, yeah, cool, that's a great idea, because I wouldn't have thought of that. And that fits, and I'm into it. 100%. So
yeah, and I think like every stream now I've brought up like acting and improvisation, but like it is really like having an improv partner, but like a very unpredictable one, right? Like that you said, like, hey man, don't do this, but do any of these things, and just go crazy and just start yelling at me, and I'll figure out how to go from there.
It's reliable in that it will give you a line. You're like, I don't know if I can work with that line. I'm gonna try again.
Yeah. So on the topic of too specific or too broad, making generators is infamously challenging. There's a reason that you're using 7+ different generators to accomplish your goals, right? So I'm going to do my book, my monthly book plug. If you are interested in procedural generation, just as a topic in general, there are 2 great books: Procedural Generation and Game Design, put together by Tanya Short and Tarn Adams.
It's like right in the title.
Yeah, and then Procedural Generation in Storytelling, which is same folks, a little bit of overlap, but they are distinct enough to read both for sure.
That's cool.
Tarn Adams, you might recognize his name. He's one of the creators of Dwarf Fortress, a pinnacle of procedural generation achievement.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Sorry to interrupt. If anyone hasn't checked out Dwarf Fortress and is interested in this topic, that's probably where you should start.
Yeah.
At least watch YouTube videos of like what the hell is Dwarf Fortress.
Yeah, Dwarf Fortress is pretty tough. But
yeah, fair warning, it's an arcane game for sure.
It's crazy. But as a generator, as a fan of generators, it's inspiring.
No joke. In high school, I would literally I was super into Dwarf Fortress in high school, and I was also in theater, and so I had a bunch of theater friends. And so what I would do is I would make a fortress in Dwarf Fortress and name all the dwarves my friends' names, and then run a simulation, and then I would
love it.
Then I would like editorialize or storify the event log, and then I would send it to all my friends, and they either thought it was really funny or they were humoring me. But either way, it ended up with really fun procedural content that made me happy and made my friends laugh as well. So
sure, yeah, and it gives you a vehicle to like tell a story about the things that were made, right? And
exactly.
They kind of self-govern, right? The dwarves kind of do their own little thing a little bit.
Absolutely.
You give them like projects, but they are the ones executing all those projects, right, on their own.
Yeah, like if they're in a bad mood or they're like hungry or they like just got broken up with, they're gonna be like, screw you, man. I'm not building a workshop. I'm locking myself in my room. Yeah. And until someone brings me a bag of cats, I'm gonna go crazy.
You know, the other thing that I feel always needs procedural generation is just like character portraits. Unless you want to pay an artist to like draw up a character. Like in Cyberpunk, we need sci-fi stuff, right? And there's actually some Cyberpunk generators out there, but frankly, games like EVE Online or Saints Row 7, they have beautiful character portrait makers, and they have a nice little random button for each individual item even. You're like, I want random eyes, but everything else I've got structured the way I want. And then like D&D, there's 1,000 fantasy games, right?
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3, the main reason I want it is for the generating a character and just NPC tokens. Just
totally.
All day.
Yeah, because like I always feel like I need a face to go with the NPC or to go with the player character or what have you. And like these days, there are so many ways to generate those now that like high school David, 20-something years ago, we just kind of verbally described everything. That's not good enough anymore. Like I have to have a picture because I can have a picture, and it's easy for me to make them. And procedural generation of that has been choice. It's been really helpful.
I'm gonna post a link in chat. If you want to walk on the wild side of procedural generation, here's something you can check out.
Sorry, Saints Row 4, not 7. Whoops. Thank you, Jagos, in chat.
So Art Breeder is, surprise, another method of procedural generation, but it is a way to literally breed images together to create a new image. And like a lot of procedural generation, a lot of what you get out may not be immediately usable.
Oh.
Also, this might be an NSFW warning, just because like I don't know what kind of images people put in Artbreeder.
I'll not click further. We'll stay right here on their landing page and just say, "Here's Artbreeder, the site for you folks."
But yeah, fair warning. If you're in an office for some reason, but it's really cool. And if you click through everything, you can like tweak genetic traits that are passed on between images. And so you'll see a lot of people, like, one of the popular things to do is like put like anime portraits together and like create an original portrait from two of these portraits, right? Yeah, like DMR said, you can make two pictures have babies.
I've used this quite a bit for NPCs in my world, because finding character portraits, enough of them to kind of cover the random NPCs that players might come into contact with, can be really difficult. So I loaded this up and just started spamming out NPC portraits.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Okay, I'm gonna bookmark this. HSG,
yeah, it's very cool. And it's actually, if you are a developer or just technically minded at all, you can. There's also like the original code for Artbreeder is out there, and you can actually host your own. It requires some beefy GPU power, because it's like a crazy,
that makes
TensorFlow machine learning thing. I tried to run it myself, and like breeding one image took like 45 minutes.
Nice.
But kind of bringing us back to the topic of generators being too specific or too broad, or needing all the different ones. Here's my subtle LegendKeeper world building with LegendKeeper plug. Before Fates, LegendKeeper actually had a generator feature, and so I don't know if anyone around remembers that. But what you could do was essentially create your own generators by, you typed in a sentence, a root sentence. And essentially you put like blank spaces in it. And you said, here's the type of thing that can go in this blank space. And then you typed another sentence or list of words that matched that blank space. And so what you could do is you could build this huge sprawling tree of essentially Mad Libs that would fill itself out every time you pressed a button, and you could like re-roll it. And that is coming back. But one of the things I was going for that is like you said, it's especially hard to do, is like there is no generator that will give you everything you need. So like, what if it was easy to make your own? And that's the hard problem, and that's one I would really like to solve. The generator came out because it was actually pretty hard to use, and it was super duper janky. Like compared to the new Fate stuff, it was pretty embarrassing. But everything grows and evolves and becomes better over time.
Right.
So generators.
I use that generator all the time to make NPCs. That's actually how, in my Cyberpunk game, I made my like NPC that I always reference, my bodybuilding dude with his miniskirt. I just tossed in a ton of options and then just got a person out of the deal. And it was great, because I'd be like, oh yeah, you walk into this place and there's a man or a non-binary person or a woman or what have you, and here's what they're wearing. And I could just like read it and start using it immediately, and it was very nice. It was very, very nice. So I can't wait for you to bring it back in whatever flavor you do, because it's very useful to me.
It'll be coming back in a serious way, because what's going to happen is it'll be coming back in the form of generator blocks, where you can assign a generator to a content block and then make templates out of those content blocks. Ooh. So you'll end up with like a tavern template or a city template or NPC template that'll pre-fill itself out whenever you make an article. As well as generators are one of the things that live in modules, which have not been introduced in the production LegendKeeper yet, but modules are ways to share content. And generators, by default, they actually always have been, are actually modularized so that when we launched LegendKeeper 0.9, we're on 0.7 right now. 0.8 is about to come out, and it'll be feature complete like tomorrow, and then I'll have to test and do a data migration, so it might be a few days. After that, 0.9 community is when you can start sharing or using third-party maps and images and sharing them and sharing links and stuff.
I cannot wait for
that. And after that, generators are going to be up to bat for being able to share and compose them with each other. And that's when I think things will get really wild, especially when you can open up LegendKeeper and search like, Anto's NPC generator, and it's just there, and you just you just click it and it's you know, in your project.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So something I can't wait to see these, Braden. That sounds so cool.
I'm excited.
Something I've been thinking about with LegendKeeper a lot is, you know, when you write a procedure, say I want to generate characters, it kind of by default, I find, starts at the too broad end of the spectrum. It's like lacking that human filter we talked about. It's lacking curation. It's not biased enough. And so you need to step in and do things, right? And it would be annoying in LegendKeeper potentially to have to do this every time. But as you said, the community fine-tunes the generators and collaborates, maybe that gets easier. But what I've been thinking about with LegendKeeper is LegendKeeper actually, for many types of generators you could make here, already has the world in it. It knows, it has your bias. It
Right.
knows what types of names and color palettes and things you tend to enjoy, or like the tone of your setting. So there are algorithms
You're reading
that
my
let
mind.
you you know, put those biases in programmatically as the seed, so that the things come out are already kind of like closer on the spectrum towards what you would have written yourself as a human.
Absolutely.
And that, I think, is like where LegendKeeper has a unique advantage as a platform for procedural content, because it knows your world. And imagine, you know, see if I built this in Here Be Taverns, which I've thought of doing, I'd have to ask, like, it's like, do you want names? I'd have to then ask world builders to go do a bunch of work. It's like, okay, now type in like 100 or give me 50 names you like. Maybe that's like fine and people don't mind.
Sure. Or like 30 or like 10 syllables that are common in the language.
Teach me, like, tell me, or just tell me like cyberpunk, tell me what kinds of things, give me data.
Right.
In LegendKeeper, you have this unique power to not, the work's incrementally already been done by the world builder over time. You don't need to just like stop them and ask them for that stuff, because they did it. They're building their world.
Right.
Yeah, I think the most simple implement, you can go like sky's the limit with what you're talking about, right? There's all sorts of crazy stuff you can do. The first iteration of that will just simply be integrating with your tags, right? Where you can just say, instead of I have to put in a list of 50 names, why don't you, generator, go talk to the LegendKeeper, you know, wiki, and say, give me everything with an NPC tag, and use that as your name database, right? Like just really like simple stuff that will let it map to what you've already created, like you've said. And then as you kind of go along, right, you know, you don't even have to get into like crazy machine learning AI stuff to get some really interesting results out of this, right? Like,
not at all.
For example, when the relations feature is added after the community feature, where you can define the relationships between two things, the generator could look at that graph, right, and maybe use some of the relationships as constraints, right? Like, oh, you know, so-and-so is already so-and-so's brother, so I'm not going to use them as an option in this generator because that wouldn't make sense, right? Like there's all sorts of stuff you could do.
That's madness.
Yeah.
It's incredible potential. It's really cool.
So I'm super excited. And yeah, like a form of that, like you're saying, like if someone, you know, inevitably is going to make, you know, a whole suite of cyberpunk generators, right? That person has curated so much for you. And if you could plug in parameters like of your own NPCs just into that thing that's already made, you're cooking with gas.
I hope to be that person, right? Like, because there's like there's fixed gangs in the world, and then there's a whole bunch of like community made gangs and all that kind of stuff. It'd be really fun to be like, I need 5 bozos, which is a gang of like clown based murderous people.
Creepy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I need 5 of those.
Halloween stream.
Totally. Right. Exactly. And so you just
So
end
spooky.
up with 5, you know, general stat blocks, and then like rough descriptions of like, this one will kill you with a giant mallet, and this one will kill you with a flower petal that spits acid, right? And I just have like 30 clown gags that are murderous, right? And I just let LegendKeeper find 5 of them for me. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I completely agree. There's entirely this sense of I want to make a generator because I know I'm going to eventually need like 100 of these things. And I don't want to make 100 things, but I will make 10 lists of 5 things or 20 things, whatever that number is, and let the generator spit out options for me, right? Like that's exactly what I want. And then to be able to like reference other stuff that I'm working on, or like you're saying, pull in generators and worlds that other people have done. Oh my God.
So like, so imagine it's trivial to implement this as well, which is like, okay, so now what if a generator can talk to another generator? Because what is a generator but a generator of generators? Like there's a recursive relationship there, right? Where I'm going to create a world generator, which is actually a composition of 10 different NPC generators, 20 different, town generators. Now, that sounds super cool. Now, keep in mind that like one of the things that generators are very bad at is context and making things make sense.
Right.
So you would get 20, probably unrelated NPCs and 20 unrelated towns, but you'd still have 20 NPCs and towns that you just now have and can kind of make sense on your own, right?
Right.
Yeah.
A great like launching point for making something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I have been building my world without it being built in anyway. So a lot of my world is built off a whole bunch of tables that I've gone and either found or made myself. And I kind of keep them in the back. And anytime I need a piece of content, I draw on those in the world. So anytime I need a tavern, I pull up my list of generic tavern names, and then a tavern exists based on one of those names that I choose from a list that I've already made ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a bunch of, like this map was procedurally generated out of it's a traveler tool set. There's a big scene of folks that are making like procedurally generated solar systems and all that kind of stuff using traveler rules.
Yeah.
And this map is exactly that, right? And I could totally see all right, I need a generator that is going to make a thing and then even like just spit me to the place that's going to make the map, right? And all I have to do is like fill in the things that the generator told me is like, this is an ice planet, this is a whatever. And I put all that in the generator, boop, I've got my map, throw that into LegendKeeper, and in like seconds, I kind of have a workable product, right? And like that is that's powerful as a GM, because I don't want to. What sucks for me about GM prep is going through the motions of like inventing all these different people or bars, and maybe they never go to one of them. It's like, there went that 20 minutes or hour, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's like, no, I just need something quick and easy, and I'll flesh it out. Like I can flesh that out, right? And that's gold.
That's the entire approach I took with my World of Ashk. Is I want to do a bit of prep up front to kind of gather the resources to make these things. And then I don't want to put anything set in stone until a player looks at it and says, what is it? So most of the pins on my map, I will move without hesitation, because most of the pins on my map, my players haven't interacted with. So most of like the towns and the little points of interest, if I decide that something on one side of the world would suddenly be cool to put in front of the players today, I'll just drag the pin and it's now in a completely different location. And most of my planning is done to be location and kind of context agnostic until I need it. And then I add the context based on where the players are and what they're doing.
So it sounds like what you're doing is getting like some details, and you're careful to keep it away from having like context that would muck it up. And then like, okay, cool, I've got the kernel details, and then I'll bolt on the context and justifications later on. But I've got the core that I need out of this thing.
So like a town, I would generate a town, and I might have an idea of kind of the type of people that live there, or the sort of tone that I want that town to have. But I probably wouldn't specify that it sits in a mountain range or on a coast. I would leave that level of detail out of it. So if the players are traveling by a coast and I need a town, I can pull it in, and I've got enough information there to get started with. And then I can be like, right, they're near a coast. So I know I need to describe the fact it's near a coast. So maybe this tavern is more ocean themed and has more seafood type stuff on the menu. So I pick a name from my tavern list that fits that vibe.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great approach.
You have tossed another link in here.
Oh yes, I have. So if you are missing the LegendKeeper generator, there's something you can use in the meantime. Right? It's a pretty awesome thing. It's called Perchance. It's a little more codey. Like you got to type like free text that matches like a syntax. It's not very hard. But it essentially can do exactly what LegendKeeper's generator is doing. It has more features than LegendKeeper's generator, I'm sure. The challenging thing with this generator crafting is just making it just stupid easy, because I have a very I get questions a lot of like, oh, can I write scripts in LegendKeeper? Can I modify the CSS? Can I blah blah blah? And my answer always is no, because one of the things I'm trying to build is something where you don't have to script anything. Doesn't mean there'll never be power user scripting kind of stuff, but for now, like, I think the meat of the challenge, and I think where a lot of the value comes from, is like making it so that someone who doesn't even know what programming is, right, doesn't have to write a context-free grammar. That's the vocabulary word of the day for those of you interested in procedural generation. A context-free grammar in order to make a generator, right? Like, it should feel like fun and creative and very visual. Doing that is hard.
Right. Yeah, like when I was first looking at it, I'm absolutely not a programmer, right? When I was first looking at the generator, I was like, okay, all right. Oh, hey, look, GIFs that instruct me. Awesome. That's what I need.
Yeah.
Oh, a YouTube video. Oh, okay. Now I'm getting it, right? And then I was able to use it. Like, once I made it do one thing, I was like, oh, okay. Everything's fallen into place. I'm ready to bang out some stuff now, right? But I completely agree. There is this, like, Adam, you were talking about this, of like, you need to get data from my brain, but you need to be like, you have to make it so that it's clear what you need from me for you to know what to do with it.
It's a tricky problem.
Yeah, someone who has no idea of what the data is needs to be able to communicate the data in a way the system can understand.
Yeah.
So if you could go shopping for data, we're halfway there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think we should also mention or share with everyone Watabu, since we've recently discussed maps, map generation. Watabu is someone who spends all their time creating procedural content generators and seems to have an affinity for medieval fantasy and things like that. So there's the link.
It's my jam.
Thank you.
And they are just, what I love about this creator is all of the generators print out just beautiful stuff. Like, it's visually beautiful.
Yeah.
They're clearly spending a lot of extra effort, because it's definitely hard to get them looking so good.
Yeah.
And I also would point out that they're incredibly generous, because if you read the details of the license on all of these generators, they are sharing the content of these generators with the community with no restrictions whatsoever. So I'm actually strongly considering using a bunch of Watabu generated maps in the next version of Here Be Taverns, which I'm currently working on. But yeah, anyone could like generate that gorgeous dungeon map there and actually put it in a supplement and sell the supplement. It doesn't have any restrictions whatsoever.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like awesome. Really generous. I mean, I would definitely, if it was me, try to like, and I will do this in Here Be Taverns, like point back to this creator and try to get them more attention, and like maybe they'll
one of my
let
favorite
me give them
things
something.
to do
but
with Watabu specifically is it makes really good bones. So like the dungeon generator that we've got up on the screen there, you might not want an old school black and white style dungeon, but this dungeon will put together something that is visually appealing in terms of layout that you can then take into your dungeon mapper of choice or use your pen and paper and recreate it in your style without having to do the thinking of what shapes am I using? How does this dungeon layout look? You get what I think to be the hardest part. What's the layout? What does it look like? And then you just get to put the dressing on top of it.
Right. So neat. That's super generous. And just so you know, folks, all I'm doing is hitting refresh. Right? Like, I'm not having to do anything special. I just hit refresh and it'll give me some new stuff. And yeah,
I love the names. Like, the names are like, oh, I'm this is giving me ideas for what the story of the dungeon is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Again, like, just steal just the parts of the generators, strip them down.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We need like a generator machine shop or something to just hack them out of all these other ones and throw them together.
Mm-hmm.
Make the ultimate generator.
Yes.
That's
amazing. They're just beautiful. Yeah.
Earlier in the year, I did a video where I kind of challenged myself to make a campaign world in a day. And I could not have done that without generators. I started from the very top, building a world out of Asgard's fantasy world generator, and then just went and dialed in until I ended up at Watabu making a small settlement, and then kind of all packaging that together inside LegendKeeper.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Super cool.
What
I
a
think I
time.
mentioned it. I think I mentioned it last stream, but for those Asgard fans out there, the Asgard maps actually have a ton of really well-structured metadata in them. So someday, my LegendKeeper side project will be a Asgard direct import to LegendKeeper that like adds like pins and articles and everything. That's like my one of my dream side projects.
I think I'm not doing this one right.
Because there's definitely enough data in an Asgard map to do that, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and one of the things I love most about Asgard is that you can click through and you just end up on Watabu settlement maps for all of those places, and you've got it all set up and ready to go. And it takes so much of the upfront thinking about, well, what does my land look like? Where are my towns and cities based, and what might their names be? You can just do that with one click and then be like, right, okay, now I can focus on the actual story and what the players are going to interact with.
And already, I know I want to run a one-shot in Millie Bog in the Meatwall district. Because what goes on in the Meatwall? I gotta know, you know? Like, we gotta have
time to find out.
Yeah, let's do this.
What happens in Meatwall stays in Meatwall.
Or doesn't.
Or doesn't.
Yeah.
Meatwall gets everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody likes it.
They've unleashed the fabled meat wall.
Yes.
Everyone run.
Exactly. Like, I'm into this.
Nobody gets out of Meatwall clean.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I'm into, like, this kind of stuff is always fun. Right? Because it's like, okay, just feed me data as a GM and let me use it, right? Let me play with it.
It lets you skip the like the blank canvas problem that, like, you know, every creator has run into at some point, where now you don't have to look at a blank canvas, and like you said, you can just hit refresh. If you don't like it, try again.
Yeah,
exactly.
Now I will add a caveat about procedural generators. That's like, you know, and I think there's a reason we emphasize like using a procedural generator as a companion rather than like a true source, right? Because what happens is so there's a researcher who is super into procedural generation. I think her PhD is in it. Dr. Kate Compton talks about what's called the 10,000 bowls of oatmeal problem, which is like every bowl of oatmeal you've ever seen is unique and different, right? Every little grain is in a different spot, but you still look at it and you're still like, that's oatmeal. And our brains are so good at pattern recognition that if like your generators are too strict or follow such a rigid set of rules that you stop seeing all the possibilities they give you, and you can't help but just see the pattern. It's why like in video games with like, you know, that like very lightly procedural dialogue where it's, you know, it selects from 3 different options, right? You're like, this stupid robotic NPC. Like there's a very like, there's an easy uncanny valley to hit where, you know, a procedural generation will actually kind of work against you if you don't, you know, do that curation process.
Is that like a thing where each engine has like a certain number of iterations before people are going to catch up on the pattern?
Essentially, yeah. Like if your, let's say your procedural generator, like if you combine all of the variables, has 1,000 possibilities. By the time you hit like the 50th, your brain is probably already picking up on some of the rules that like play with that generator. And the more you go, the worse it gets, right? And so a generator, the more you use a generator, depending on how it's made, the more it will kind of like lose its magic, because you're like, oh, and I know the NPC will say something like, the magic gemstone of some color is in the monster's den, made of some mineral.
You see the blank Mad Lib.
Yeah.
You start the more you expose raw generator to like your consumers or yourself. I mean, you already know what it is because you made it, but like to like your players, right? Like if you just hand your players a generator, it's probably not going to work out because they'll lose the magic pretty quickly.
Yeah, it almost feels like if I go back to my NPC generator I was using, I always felt like, man, I need to be coming back in here and adding more ethnicities. I need to be adding more hair colors, more styles of clothing, like because you run into like shorty shorts. Or like full what is it? God, like a suit, right? I lost the word for suit. It's been so long since I've worn a suit because of COVID. I've lost what that word was. Like they run into that enough. It's like, okay, this really isn't that dynamic, right?
Yeah.
And so I definitely see like a need as somebody who would want to make generators in LegendKeeper. I'm gonna have to kind of also have it in my mind that after like 6 months or so, I should probably just go in there and add another 100 items or another 10 items, whatever the amount is. Just add some more stuff so that it can surprise again. Right.
You also have the problem of contradictions too. Like one example, in one of Sharedlandia's old generators, Sharedlandia is like the shared LegendKeeper project. It was like an experiment that just puts all 10,000 LegendKeeper users in one project and just sees what happened. Spoiler alert, everything gets deleted. That's what happens. Someone goes in and just deletes everything.
And Braden goes, restore. I don't know what
restore,
you do.
Yeah, it's too much. I could, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But you have this problem of like, if you have, let's say, like a multi-sentence generator, like a tavern generator. Like one I made was, the adjective noun tavern is located direction of the building, town hall, whatever, right? And it would say something like, oh, the air is like heavy with the scent of frying bacon or whatever. But then like 2 sentences later it'll say, there's no bacon to be found, everyone's eating cake. And you're like, come on, man. Like
mystery plot hook here.
Where's the bacon? All of a sudden
the meat, something to do with the meat wall in Millie Bob.
My continuity. And so one problem that generators has to solve is like, how can they be smart enough to prevent contradictions like that? Because that really kind of takes you out of the experience, right? Even as a creator that's curating, you're like, come on, man, you just said there wasn't bacon, and now you're saying there's bacon.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. This building is lousy with bacon. How did that happen? Yeah.
Yeah. And so one approach to that, it was made by a developer named Bruno Diaz. He made a procedural generation engine called Improv, which is based on, or it was inspired by a generator created by Dr. Kate Compton, which was Tracery. So just name dropping if anyone wants to Google this stuff. And what Improv does is, so you create your Mad Lib, right? But then not only do you decorate the blank spaces, you decorate the choices with like tags, and you say, if it picks one of these options, right? Like let's say, in that tavern Mad Lib, you're like, okay, if it picks bacon, we're going to tag that with savory food. And if it picks cake, we're going to tag the whole generator with salty food or sweet food going forward, right? And so then you can make your choice pools prune themselves in order to become congruent with the tag pool. So as you generate, the options start getting pruned to only the things that make sense with the tags that have been selected so far too. And so that's like one simple way to kind of to reduce the occurrence of that problem.
That's amazing. I think Anto and I have a potential solution for the other problem, which is like the starting to predict the pattern. Though we stumbled upon this by accident. So him and I were talking about character generation in Here Be Taverns, because I'm just starting to rebuild it from scratch. I'm going to build version 2. And we're talking about character. Yeah. So this was 2015. So version 2 is coming. Yes. Just started. So we're talking about character generations. And we stumbled upon this idea for like a chaos slider. Juicy chaos slider. So you could like, be generating your predictable cyberpunk movie titles.
Sure.
But you could slide it up a bit and start getting in some bacon or like a little more, just you could make this thing go a little more out there. Right.
Yeah.
But then okay, this is crazy now. And then you could bring it back down and get more narrow on the choices.
Yeah, like an entropy setting.
So when we were talking about it, Anto, it was a total joke. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But now, after this discussion, I'm thinking, damn, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So like, cool. If you had enough knowledge about like different generators and what they do, right, you could have a setting that's like, okay, in this blank space, put a baked good, but I'm going to tweak the chaos sliders. There's also a 1% chance it'll call some other generator somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And get its input to it.
You got to get out of that like local maxima, right? You're on that little, you're stuck at the top of that hill. You got to jump to the next mountain.
Right.
I think that the key for really good generation is that kind of compounded generator. If you think of it like a Mad Lib, instead of pulling from one list, each entry wants to be its own group of generators. And you say, right, okay, I need an NPC who has a name. So it will choose different sets of name generators and pick one. And then that has tags that inform the context of which batch of generators the next piece of information comes. So if you want a desert setting, you at the start say, right, okay, I want it desert themed. So in the first list, it goes, right, okay, I'm going to go to all of the name generators that are tagged with desert. Yeah, pick from them. And then that pulls up a male name, or a masculine name. So now the next thing that's on their features is only going to draw from these generators that have been tagged masculine, and on it goes, and narrows its focus each time. Ideally, so you end up with something that is internally consistent.
Yeah. I kind of like the idea of... I like the idea with that, as long as there is that chaos where it's like every so often it will just ignore what I say.
Yeah.
Right. And like the desert town will have a treehouse in it.
It's just like an improv partner.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Like I do need it to like at some point be able to like, and here's the zinger, right? That it's like, okay, cool. Now like, how does a tree grow here? Is it like some old growth thing when there used to be a forest, or did somebody like just move a damn tree here? Right, and then I can work with that, right?
Because I mean, let's be real. We're procedurally generating for us, like
right.
A lot of the time, right? Where it's as a writer, you're like, okay, I can sit here and think up a tavern and a backstory and a dungeon under the tavern and the town that, or you could plug it into a generator and get something. It's like you're playing a video game that surprises you too.
Anto, you linked this in the chat.
I did.
This is one of my favorite map generators. Like, it's just so good. I'm glad you linked it.
If I was building a new world, that is the only tool I would use for the map, for the main map. I'd go there, I'd load one up, and then I'd be like, right, okay, don't need to do anything else with my map. It just exists now.
Yep. Look at that. Just change the label, make anything I want here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is such a powerful tool. I really, really, really like this map generator.
It's so powerful. I don't understand all the options. If you go up top left and expand kind of that menu, there are things in there that I look at and I'm like, that's too much. Like my brain cannot cope with
I'm sorry,
that's that challenge Braden was talking about, I think.
Yeah.
Like to get the power and the like total tweakability of a generator, you end up in these very technical languages, or like the language is either technical in the domain or in like actual like technical generator sense of the word.
Yeah.
So you could have it very technical options like use like this percentage and like weighting and grammars and Markov chains, and like that's one part of technical. The other part is just domain technical. So like this Asgar probably knows a bunch of words in the realm of cartography, and that like the generator understands and are specific to generating a map. And so you'd have to like become an actual cartographer to like learn what the word for like the shape of the coast in a fjord like is technically.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge to keep it simple.
Yeah. Well, and then like each berg has its own precipitation indicator and temperature indicators and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, this is the amount of data,
unreal.
It just like feeds me is like, yeah, why wouldn't I want this?
I think the funny thing is like the ultimate world building generator is something that just simulates a world from scratch, right? Like, I always like daydream about like, oh, what if you could like, you start off with something blank and you draw tectonic plates, and then you hit the play button and the plates collide and create mountain ranges, and then trees grow, and then organisms evolve and form villages, and then you just pause, and then you're like, okay, this is the world I'm going to do my D&D in, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Wild shit like that.
Like in high school, my buddies and I were playing D&D, and we're like, let's make a new world. And none of us knew how to make a world. So like, kid you not, what we did was we loaded up Civilization. I think it was like Civ 4 or Civ 3 because of how old I am. And we were just like, let's just play like 20 turns of this, figure out what the whole map is, and that's the map of our world, right? And like, that was like as good as we could come up with it way back then. Like you can notice I use video games a lot as my procedural engine.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's what I learned how to do it. That's how I learned how to do it. Oh no, okay. Oh,
Civ is a really good one.
Yeah,
that's where they all go.
Right.
That's where all the crazy good procedural content like developers go, are like in gaming. So
yeah,
this
right.
is a good idea.
No, yeah, exactly. And dude, you're absolutely right. The idea of like, I just want to like make a world and watch it collide for a little while, and then pause and be like, yes, let's move this and move this. But yes, this is it. Like, because like in Civ, you can just make the AI run. You're watching the whole world, and you're watching little settlers, and then like after a while, it's like, oh, I've got cities laid out in a pretty logical way, right? I see where the roads are formed in a pretty logical way. Okay, great. I can kind of take that inspiration and do something with it, right? And similarly with this, it's like, okay, where are the religions? Okay, they kind of fall on national lines, but some of them don't. That's interesting, right? Let's talk about the stories there. Like this kind of stuff really feeds me because, again, like you're saying, I'm not smart enough to let a world, like simulate a world. Like I'm not smart enough to do that. But if I can find a program that'll do it for me, and then I can like find the stop button.
Yeah, you want enough of it so that it feels like a person's hand wasn't involved for every step of the process.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's just to make it so that like I know my like creative crutches. I know what is going to be comfortable for me to create in terms of game, right? And like guys, I can do a heist. Like I can do a heist anytime. You want a heist right now, I can do a heist, right? And it's going to have a couple of different variables, and I can always do a heist. But you want to do like, I don't know, something outside of my comfort zone. It's like, I need inspiration. I need help, right?
Yeah.
And that's what these do for me, is they give me help in the things that I just don't know enough about, right?
Yeah, we're not gonna be able to off the cuff be like, oh, the river flowing down the mountain created erosion, revealing this gold vein that now this local village thrives off of.
Yeah, no.
Which caused the monastic traditions of this religion to spread eastward.
Yeah. Would never do that. Would never. I'd be like, there's a mountain. It's in the way. Trade can't happen around mountain ranges, I think.
It's just dawning on me that I should probably be using generators like this as some sort of like homeschooling tool. Because what a fun, crazy way to learn what like temperate zones and precipitation are and whatever, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Make stuff appear and like poke it and turn the dials and be like, oh, if you do that, the world ends. So we won't do that. We'll just go back. Yeah.
1 second. I have to ban somebody.
Really
Ignore this kiddo in chat, folks.
Oh, but I do want to be famous. And wait, I don't wait. No, this is
this is terrible, right?
I am famous. I'm on Highshelf Gaming.
Thank you.
We don't need to buy fame.
Amazing.
That's right. We're already mega famous. All right, there we go. Oh, I tried to like get rid of this kiddo.
Accidentally banned the entire chat.
Yeah, that's actually what I was about to do. I was like, maybe I shouldn't do that. There we go. Ban. There's the button.
Option.
There's the thing. Whew. Thank you, DM Rawlings. Yeah, that character was sus.
Very sus.
Super sus. Sussy.
Saw them vent. Okay, so yeah, I love this tool, and it has gotten me away from using video games to generate things. Like I'll straight up, because it gives me so much detail, and it's way more granular and precise than what a video game is. Because video games don't need to be that precise, right?
Yeah.
And
so good.
There's like a whole world of things that you can use as generators. If you don't want to go and use an online generator, pick up a local newspaper and just flick through it and write down some of the names that appear. That will give you a list of names that you wouldn't have gotten any other way. And you know that they will work for if you're running a modern setting. They'll work because you're picking up a modern newspaper.
Right. Yep. Yeah, agreed. And I really love all the generators you guys have brought. I am bad about like organizing all my generators. So like you guys have noticed, I just kind of like bookmark things randomly, and then later on I'm like, what is in my list of bookmarks? I think I've shown it before, but like I'm gonna go to Art Breeder actually. I traditionally use for like face generation, I use this face does not exist or this person does not exist.com.
Yeah.
The AI generated faces. Those can be very uncanny valley. They can be real creepy. But every so often you get some great faces. This though, I had not seen Art Breeder before, and you guys really turned me on to this. So I think I'm going to use this. Like, look at this dude. This dude right here screams like Cyberpunk Solo. He's going to like kill everybody in the room. He's probably a bad guy, but looks like a good guy to begin with. Like, I already know that. I didn't know everything
super
about this
villain.
guy. Yeah, I already know everything
energy.
about this guy. Yeah, exactly. And I know like what he's going to look like when he's old. You know, so boom. Now I know how he.
Perfect.
You know,
that's incredible.
Like I got it. Oh man, what if he's like Russian or Slavic? You know, like boom. You know, like this Art Breeder is a maze. Oh man, if he's the Joker. All right, this is his bozo profile, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, there is.
And if you,
it's one of the bozos.
Yeah.
If you have another picture that you like the style of, right, you can style transfer. And you know, if you've got like a noir photo or some sort of noir content, you can project that noir on top of that guy, and Art Breeder will figure that out.
That is glorious.
The compounding really comes in because you can get images from this person does not exist, combine it with an art style that fits the art style that your game is in, and boom, you've got so many options.
You're blowing my mind, Anto. That is amazing. I'm into this.
Unreal.
I'm into this. Yeah, Art Breeder is now my home for finding portraits because I was playing Little Leagues, kids. I was like playing with some T-ball, some bunt and runs, but now Now we're going to minor leagues. I cannot wait. This is gonna be so good for me. Do we have any other things? Oh, I see here you have one more link. We are running low on time, folks. Just so you know, I do have eventually a hard stop. So, yeah. Oh, Nefarious Tarnus. What was the crazy mad wizard face? I think you're talking about this guy.
It's got to be that one, right? It's got to be that one.
Yeah, this character. I mean, there's some juice down here. Oh, there's only like one row of options, but like, look at this mane. Look at this lion's mane of business.
That is something.
Yeah.
Print screen that. That's going to be Rich's Pub and Grubs operator. That is.
Yes, Rich is going to be so happy to have representation in your game. Yeah, this is like, oh, look at this guy. He's like a cleaned up tramp. That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, this is all wild to me. I love everything about it. Okay, let's kick on Kassoon here. Wrong window. There we go.
So Kassoon is one that I have used quite a lot actually to build out Ashk. It has an area for generating like a town, and it will give you information on all manner of things, like some of the businesses, what the population and the demographics are, what are the nearby points of interest, like a whole bunch of information. So I just drop a load of pins on my map, copy all that information. And then if the players say, right, I want to go to that town, I will grab my list of town names and name it something consistent with my world, and then see what information Kassoon has generated that I can use. I don't use all of it, but I know that I've got something there. So if they say we want to go out of left field and go across the desert and go to this particular town, I've got something there to use as a starting point.
Yeah. Yeah, and folks, Kassoon here, let me go back. Kassoon, if you scroll down a little bit, world map generator, all that kind of stuff. Oh.
Really cool.
Let's do that. And then town generator, right? Click on this. Again, just a quick refresher, what have you. You get a whole new thing. 11,000 people, just under 400 acres. And then here are the taverns. Here are the patrons in that tavern. Yeah, that is real nice. Just, I need something, give me something, and then when this session is over with, I will then build out the rest of this.
Yeah, exactly.
That is good. Duck cake and a tankard of cider. I'm into that.
Need duck cakes. Right.
Yeah, 1000%. Well, cool. I really like all the little tools y'all have put into the chat. And folks that are watching this on YouTube, all of these links are going to be in the show notes down below. So click on those. The folks that have been watching on Twitch, obviously they're in the chat, right? So if you need us to repost any of these links, let us know, and I'll get them reposted right quick into the chat here. Do we have any other generators? I want to make sure that we're good. Unfortunately, folks, I do have to leave in the next few minutes, so I wanted to make sure that if we had any last topics to get through, we have time for that.
I will probably have some links in my huge folder of things that I use, but we can get all those posted in the show notes for people to go and browse at their leisure. Kind of our curated list of here are some of the generators we use.
Yeah. Yeah, and DM Rawlings, you're entirely right. Perchance was underrepresented. We have it here, and it looks really great as a build your own generator toolkit. And I'm gonna have to start playing with this a little bit more for sure.
I guess I'll just mention again that I'm in the early stages of completely rebuilding Here Be Taverns, which is my fun, fantasy themed generator.
Yeah.
So if anyone in the chat is interested in getting their ideas into that project, please reach out to me directly, or if you don't know how to find me, talk to Dave.
Well, actually, this is a great opportunity.
We can all bring these crazy ideas into this thing.
Tell us what your Twitter is. Tell us how to get a hold of you. We're kind of on that wrap up moment anyway. So yeah, tell us how to get a hold of you, and then folks, I'm going to link all this in the show notes as well.
So you can all reach me on Twitter. I'll put it in the chat here. This won't tag anyone, will it? I don't know. There's probably no one there. So that's my Twitter handle. DMs are always open.
Yep, Sword and Source at Sword and Source.
Yeah,
slide into his DMs.
Just get on in there, and yeah, if there's anything you want to see or you're interested in just talking more about how I'm building it, I'm always happy to talk about like development details and showing early ideas and things like that.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, maybe we can. I'm hoping I can bring some inspiration from this chat. There was a bunch of great ideas in this discussion.
Dude, and Braden, you really took us to school on like what was procedural generation theory, which was really surprising, and I loved it. I love that we got to talk about like what's going on behind the scenes, because I'm an end user, right? I'm like, make it fun. Click buttons until it's fun.
Let me click the shinies.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really cool.
It is a really, really fascinating area of like study, just like academically, if that's what you're into. But it's fun to study and it's fun to use. So it's like it's perfect. It's a wonderful topic.
Yeah. Since we're on the wrap up stuff, Anto, I want to talk a little bit about Icarus Games and how people can get a hold of you there and all your awesome YouTube content.
You can find me all over the internet at Icarus Games. Anywhere you look, you're going to find me. YouTube, Twitch. I do world building live streams where I do collaborative stuff with chat, which is always fun. YouTube, Patreon, Twitter, anywhere. Just search Icarus Games and you'll find my face.
Yes. And here, I'll just toss your Twitter into the chat here real quick so that the folks have it. And Braden, dude, LegendKeeper, right? LegendKeeper.com.
LegendKeeper.
Yep.
Absolutely. LegendKeeper makes it easy to build immersive worlds for stories and RPG campaigns. LegendKeeper.com is my baby. It's your personal wiki, your personal Google Maps for your fantasy setting. It is just a joy to work on. So I want to shout out to all of my Patreon supporters that are making it possible. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this has been phenomenal, and you're doing this full time, and it's just amazing to see like your pace of development is really solid. This is all lots of fun. Yeah,
really good. Yeah. The code must be terrible, dude.
I don't look at that.
Yeah,
just focus on the end product.
Yeah, don't look at the code behind the curtain. All right,
all the users are super happy. That's what matters. Yeah. We love it.
That's right.
Just ship it.
Just ship it. Done. Yeah, and anybody who doesn't know me already, I'm David. This is Highshelf Gaming. This is a channel you've been watching on. But down below, we have all of our links to our Discord and all of the places you can find us. All of us have Discords, I think, right? Like Anto, you've got an awesome Discord that's super active. LegendKeeper's Discord is like constantly full of great game ideas. And do you do a Discord for There Be Taverns? Do you do any of that kind of stuff yet?
No, I haven't started one of those yet. I'm on the fence about it. Maybe we can talk about that on another stream or something.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, but I'm really happy hanging out in streams. I just joined Icarus Games Discord. I've been in LegendKeepers for a while, trolling Braden whenever I get time. And I'm loving it. This community is amazing. So
it's a really friendly community. Yeah. Community building is tough. Right, you got to get it right. You have to get rid of the trolls.
Well, that's why I'm hesitant. It's like I would hate to. I hope what you'll all learn about me is I hate to do things badly. I like to, try to bring a level of quality and attention to everything I work on. And I know a community really isn't easy. Yeah, you do have to make sure that it's healthy and happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks for the follows, guys. That was really great of all of you to follow. I just got a couple more. That was really nice of you all. Question.
Sorry. A couple things in the chat reminded me just real quick. One, LegendKeeper's merch shop is going up here within the next couple weeks. So we've got some like crazy kick-ass shirt designs. Like I'm so excited to reveal them. So keep an eye out on LegendKeeper.com and the Patreon for that. And Nefarious Tarnus, more pin shapes are coming. Actually, custom pin shapes are coming. So stay tuned.
Yeah,
pin editor.
Yeah,
and pin shape editor.
Oh my god, yeah.
You just gotta
not that
Adobe,
far yet.
Just make Adobe Illustrator in LegendKeeper.
In LegendKeeper, that's all I need.
Easy, piece of cake.
Yeah, layers and shit.
I need the Bezier curves, please, and the pen tool. Obviously,
give me the ability to code LegendKeeper.
The next thing they're gonna ask for is I need a GIF in my pin so that whenever I hover on the pin, there's a whole.
Interesting you say that.
He's thought of it.
Gifts and pins are totally going to work when custom pins come out, by the way.
Amazing.
Stop it. Stop it.
Listen, focus on the shirts, Braden. I was wondering.
Shirts are the most important thing.
I didn't know what to wear for the stream. But like if I had a sweet LegendKeeper shirt, it would have been an obvious choice.
1000%.
Oh, the designs are so cool. Can't wait.
Oh my god.
That's
okay.
awesome.
All right. Everybody, this has been a blasty blast, right? I mean, we've had a lot of fun and I've learned a ton, just a ton on this stream. So thank all of you for coming on and talking about stuff. Like, you're all awesome, man. Yeah, shut up and take my money, chat. Okay, everybody at home, thanks a ton for spending your time. I have 18 of you that I know about. There may be more, because like Twitch is kind of funny about the way that it shares viewership. I would love to raid some friendly, hapless streamer right now.